The last time we were together, we spoke about anti-aging research. It seems to be the most prominent area that's going on in medical and scientific research now, because it's been an ancient quest of human beings to have longevity and quality of life as they age. And we presented information from 1996 in this book, Anti-Aging Metabolism, by Dr. That from Japan, Dr. Kenichi Katani of the Faculty of Medicine, University of Tokyo, and National Institute of Longevity. And if you recall, we showed you this graph that they discovered. If the green, the top one is male and the bottom line is females, on a graph with multiple countries that have all the citizens' age that are in a computer. And Japan had the longest living longevity, and they found also that in Okinawa, the individuals were living 10 years longer than in the mainland. And he tells how they sent a team of researchers to Okinawa, and they found that the people ate primarily lower priced brown rice rather than white rice. They ate fresh fruits and vegetables that were vine ripened. They drank a very biting tea made from mature leaves that have more phytochemicals in them than the higher priced tea that the mainland people use. And this was they thought was the reason. Well, this time we're going to move to an article that was in Epoch Times about the Okinawans were apparently awakened that some provincial pride that they were special people living longer than any other group of people on planet Earth. And the World Health Organization has done a survey globally and termed these areas blue zones, which we use as a slide to start off each PowerPoint, because we're focusing on this on several sections, because that's 100% frequency of people. Everyone has to participate in the aging process, and apparently everyone would like to have a long, happy life and be healthy for years. So this lecture will be on that, and I keep trying to give you practical information rather than it's heavy science, because most people don't want to be biochemists or geneticists or a health provider. They just want to know, what might this do for me? So we will continue with this focus on longevity, because it's the hottest area of research going on. And so now we'll go to the first slides that come from Okinawa in this article in Epoch Times. I like this first slide because it emphasizes the world and how the World Health Organization has surveyed many places, and they call it blue zones, where the people tend to live significant numbers to 100 years of age. And they're trying to explore these different blue zones about what is different there versus other areas on the globe where populations do not live to 90 to 100 years of age and in good health. So we will go to now the first slide in the Epoch Times that covers what I say, apparently the population at Okinawa, after the mainland group had come in and got their numbers, they had a lot of pride that we really are important people, And so they founded a foundation there to study their aging. And one of the things they point out is that if you'll note in the italics there, that they looked at diet, social engagement, physical activity, and the genetics are the key to Okinawan long lives. And one of the first things they found out is in their diet, there's about a 10-to-1 ratio of the amount of carbohydrates or fruits and vegetables they eat to in regard to meat. And on the first page of this thing, they have a couple there that they found out that there were many couples up into their 90s able to live independently without any help. And this is remarkable. Now, here's what some of the things they found out, that they had 90,526 citizens in the islands that were above 100 years of age. And this was data gathered by the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare of Okinawa. They had 1,334 people that were at least 100 years old. Of these, 152 were men and 1,182 women. As you can see, there's a lot more women that age, and there's a lot of theories because of this. And the oldest living person in Okinawa was 114 years old, and she was a woman. And 2/3, or about 66 and a third percent of people that were still living independently were 97 years of age, which is quite remarkable. Now, they say that there's a prevailing philosophy among these Oriental society individuals from saying of Confucius, which was Hara Ha Chi Bu, which basically means stop eating when you're 80% full, don't overeat. And I think probably in your personal experiences, you don't feel real good if you overeat. And so this is a common practice of the people in these islands. And in 100,000 citizens in Okinawa, 81 will reach about 100 years of age. Contrasted with mainland North America, USA, in 100,000 citizens, only about 20 will reach 100 years of age. And so they're about 4 times the number that live to be 100. And as we pointed out, they have a good quality of life. They can live independently, even up to 97 years of age. Now, the Journal of Science Investigation in 2022 focused on this this saying of Confucius to not overeat. So they took human subjects that were living outside the blue zone population and put them on a restricted diet. And I think that's interesting because here in the United States, in the state of Arkansas, at least 40 years ago, they pointed out that in various animals, if you restrict them about 30% of the amount that they would just eat naturally, that you'd get about a 30% increase in longevity versus those that just ate all they wanted. Well, in these human test subjects that they limited their diet, one of the first things they noted was increase in thymus tissue that is between the 2 lungs, right under the breastbone. And this tissue under the microscope looks a lot like tonsillar tissue or lymph nodes, because it's clusters of lymphoid tissue. And you frequently hear of T white cells. Well, these T stands for thymus. And very interesting, at Texas A&M Veterinary School of Medicine, which was the principal academic institution among 12, which Carrington Laboratories raised funds back in the 1980s to develop a new drug from the active ingredient from aloe leaf gel, which had a 5,000-year history of being used in multiple civilizations to support good health. And in cats, they found out when they added the active ingredient that they found out was a carbohydrate called acetylated mannose, mannose being a sugar, and acetylated being a chemical radical added to the sugar that cells just love, acetates. That when they fed this in the cats, that when they sacrificed them, that their thymic tissue was up to 8 times in mass. And this is probably significant because T cells have a incredible capacity in host defense and regulation of cells in the body, because in human children, by the time they're about 6 or 7 years old, the thymic tissue beneath the breastbone goes away, and these T cells from the thymus are spread to the lymph nodes in the different regions of the body and to the spleen and to the bone marrow for the rest of their life. So having a lot of T cells is very healthy. One of the things you find out is that in premature infants, there's a tendency to those that are around 1-2 pounds to have serial infections as they grow up, and that their thymic tissue is reduced in amount and their T cell population is lower. So these T cells, as we'll get to in a minute, meaning thymus white cells, have what are called plural potential properties. That means plural, many, or plural. And academician writes about every 10 years an article about various articles that have appeared in multiple journals. And he says that these T lymphocytes, or thymic lymphocytes, secrete over 50 different types of, in their cell synthesis, of types of molecules that are cell activators, or called cytokines, growth factors, chemokines, interleukins, and interferons. There are signal molecules I think of often kind of like IBM cards that are sent by the serum phase of the blood around the cells through the body to do the next 6 type of things. That when these T cells are first made, they seem to have an analytical capacity where they migrate into the tissues, they sense the environment, and if there's any deviation from normal balance, or as the founder of human physiology, Dr. Hans Selye said, homeostasis, that these T cells will secrete these protein molecules that have inflammation to the tissues to try to bring things to balance or homeostasis in any tissue that they go into or organ. Next thing is that these cells and their multiple abilities or plural potential, that if they find any foreign type of membranes of an infection, they will release molecules, particularly interleukins, that will activate host defenses. Not only white cells increasing in number, you frequently know that if somebody, well, they want to know if someone has appendicitis, they'll do a complete blood count to see if the white cell count is up. But also this host defense activates cells that make antibodies and acute reactive phase proteins that attack any type of bacteria or virus or fungus or tuberculosis organism, any type of infection. In addition, the T cells secrete growth factors that stimulate vital organ parenchymal cells to keep them active and functioning. These T cells also can detect any very subtle changes in the membrane, because if there is a mutation of the nucleic acids to form a malignant cell, these T cells can detect the difference between a normal cell and a normal malignant cell that is mutated and attempt to destroy it before it makes 2 or 3 other cells or starts a tumor mass. So that's one of the important functions of T cells. And we tend to have less T cells as we age. And that's the reason malignancies tend to be associated with people getting older. The next thing that the T cell can do, if they go into an environment of tissue and there is cells that have died, or there's debris from an infection where there's a process to destroy bacteria, and they may have caused damage to cells and they're degenerated, it will essentially take the foreign debris into the macrophage that has special enzymes to digest it. And this macrophage, meaning big eater in Greek, is another plural potential of these T cells that are so important, that are spread through the body, and so important to have a good thymic tissue to spread these T cells throughout the bone marrow, the lymph nodes, the spleen, and the liver. Another very important function of these T cells is that a Chinese investigator at the University of Chicago was able to collect them by flow cytometry and put them into tissue culture, and by adding different growth factors could make different kinds of cells in the body that are in different organs. And it's a stem cell capacity that these T cells have. They're called say a CD14. That CD means cell domain to identify it, that it can migrate in to an aged or damaged or poorly functioning organ cell, and the macrophager comes in and destroys the old aged or sick cell, and the new stem cell that or T cell that comes in will transform, and just like it does in the embryo, and become either a liver cell or a bone cell or a cell for the lining of the GI tract, or very importantly, if there's a degeneration of neurons in the brain, a aged or degenerated neuron can be removed by one of these T cells acting as a macrophage, and then a undifferentiated, uncommitted T cell will migrate in and transform, just like in the embryo, to replace it and be a new, young organ cell. So this is one of the things that these blue zone people do by not overeating. This supports the activity of the thymic T cells to carry out all these functions, which are, if you look at them, step back at it, as we age, this keeps us in good shape, and to not have diseases associated with aging. Now, in Okinawa, they did this new foundation did 1,000 interviews trying to see what has led to the longevity. And one of this is the 5 areas they really focused on: dietary habits, exercise habits, genetic details, mental and spiritual activities in the community, and social and behavior patterns of these people. In the dietary habits, one of the first things they found is that the group that came in after World War II and did the survey made a mistake. They assumed that the Okinawans' primary intake was, like in the mainland, was that of rice, that was the big bulk portion or percentage of the diet. One of the first things they found out is, no, yes, they do eat brown rice, but far more they eat sweet potatoes. Up to a third of the calories in their diet came from sweet potatoes and not rice like the mainland things. Also, they, in their mainland things, really downgraded the amount of meat in their diet, but they said that the Okinawans eat more pork along with fish, but they cook the pork literally for days until the heat and the oxygen, 21% oxygen, takes many of the negative things about pork meat is destroyed by the heating, and it's just chains of complex amino acids that are not as challenging to the biochemistry of the individual by excessive cooking of pork, which was not recognized by the original research group. Now, what does all of this do in Okinawa and the Blue Zone things? Well, there's a lower rate of cardiovascular disease seen as aging, because as people age, strokes and heart attacks and peripheral vascular disease that leads to amputations of the toes, the feet, the lower legs, and sometimes the entire leg. And part of this was that in the blue zones, like in Okinawa, they consume less salt or sodium chloride. They have lower blood pressure. They have when you're saying don't eat till you're over, feel only about 80% full, you have less obesity, you have less gastrointestinal tract symptoms, and you have less bone diseases, like people fall due to osteoporosis, unstable skeleton, and they hit their head or they break bones. They have less of this when you don't have obesity, and you have a more moderation of the diet. You also have less cancer cases in the blue zones, and that's also seen in Okinawa. And very important, there's a lower incidence of dementia or failure for memory and cognition as people age, which as a group, there's 2 big groups. One is Alzheimer's, which is felt to be very closely related to genetics, and also genetics of the cardiovascular system or the blood vessels. There can be dementia due to ischemia, due to hardening of the arteries, and reduced oxygen and nutrient supply to the brain, which is different from Alzheimer's. Very importantly, there was a high quality of life with aging, and they keep referring to the fact that 97% of the people in their 90s live independently and they need no outside help. The diet in general is rich in nutrients. And again, they emphasize that they stop eating before they feel full and bloated. We mentioned before that they found out by their local Okinawan Foundation that sweet potatoes were one of the main food substances that they ate rather than rice like the mainland Japanese people, and that they eat green and yellow plant vegetables. The gardening is very common in Okinawa, and they leave them on the plants until they mature on the plants. They don't pick them green, bring them in, put them in the kitchen, which is an unfortunate thing that is developed in developed countries. The agricultural business and the grocery store chains, that they harvest fruits and vegetables when they're green, so they'll have a shipping life and shelf life. And when you harvest them green, the primary molecule in them is chlorophyll, and it's before the genes in the plant have put the nutrients that our genes call for in cellular synthesis to make compounds to maximally produce bioactive molecules that operate the biochemistry and physiology of life. Another thing they found out in this Okinawan-based research, that they have a lot of soybeans and tofu that they eat in their food, which is bean protein. And then they use seaweed to boil it to make soups and various condiments, and that they have a ratio of about 10 times more carbohydrate than they have protein in their diet. And as I mentioned before, the Federal Anti-Aging Laboratory in Arkansas decades ago showed in animals, mice, rats, cats, and dogs, and I think they use miniature pigs too, that they know what their common lifespans are, and that if they reduce the calories that these animals think, that they get about a 30% increase in years of longevity and good health. This anti-aging research laboratory has a lot of basic science models that they use worms, fruit flies, mice, rats, cats, dogs, of known lifespans, and then they implement different modalities to see what will improve their quality of life and their longevity. And in a former position I had with a large international dietary supplement company, contacts were made in Arkansas for me to make a presentation to this federal anti-aging laboratory. And I would say there were at least 25 or 30 of their researchers in my audience. And I presented early information that suggested that the active ingredient from the aloe leaf was supporting desirable biochemistry, and 9 molecules were utilized in cellular synthesis to make a membrane domain for cell-to-cell communication among the trillions of cells in the body to move toward balance and homeostasis. And I thought with this information, they would do some research with their various basic science models. And lo and behold, I found out that they would do this, but only if the outside group would provide the funds to do the research. So nothing came of this. And I have never forgotten this, wishing there were a source of research funds to actually do the basic science of, does the acetylated mannose or ace mannan, when included in the diet of worms and fruit flies, mice, rats, cats, and dogs, would it extend their life without starving them a little bit or not letting them have all they want to eat, because it would be very desirable if you consider all the TV ads you get that increase or suggest a constant bombardment about eating various foods. And I particularly think of all the pizza ads that we see on TV to snack on, that it's hard to take a population that's bombarded with advertisements to eat and say that you'll be healthier if you'll eat less. Well, in Okinawa, the thing that we call about retirement, in other words, just stopping working at fishing or farming, is virtually unknown. People will be found fishing and working in their gardens in their 90s. They have a very active family and community life. Human beings are a herd animal, and apparently interacting with other people and being socially engaged is a positive thing, because all the systems in our body are influenced by our thoughts and our activity of the function of the brain, which is the mind. In stimulating the mind and new ideas and new activities are healthy for the body. I had mentioned that they had people in their 90s that were fishing and working in agriculture. And of course, this is exercise. They socially engaged is exercise in the mind, but fishing and agriculture is exercising the skeletal muscles of the body. And all evidence is that our bodies were constructed, and the genetic control is designed to be used. And if you put your arm in a sling and say you break a bone and you just keep it in a sling for an excessive period of time, you can virtually can't move it and lose strength and all. Our cells of our body are designed to be used and to increase blood flow to them and nutrients and to take away waste products. And we're designed to be used. As we pointed out, that they had individuals living independently, needing no outside help up into their 90s. And once they do stop in their late 90s fishing and agriculture and get up toward 100, they tend to volunteer in groups, and they work together, called BASHKOFU yarn. And this is made from fibers of a special banana that is grown in Okinawa. And they make purses, baskets, containers. They sit around and talk to each other, and they're active with their fingers and their hands. Older people do this. I would say kind of like sometimes in the United States, older people play checkers or dominoes, or have different types of games they play with cards. Well, older people that really are getting up to 100 or more are volunteering in the villages as a group and have social interaction, weaving these articles. And it's very uncommon in Okinawa to have inactivity, because inactivity causes muscle loss, frailty, fatigue, cognitive decline, and imbalance and tendency to fall and break bones. The physical and mental activity that the Okinawans engage in slows the aging process and supports longevity. I want to point out that before our calendar started, in the BC period in Greece, that the individual that is credited being the father of Western medicine, Hippocrates, if you go on Google and ask for statements of Hippocrates, you'll find he stated, if we could provide to the individual optimal nutrition and exercise, comma, not too much, not too little, we would have found the safest pathway to good health. So that was recognized by Hippocrates before our calendar started. Diet and exercise. And beneath this, he also wrote, let your food be your medicine and your medicine your food. So with the modern dietary supplementation and what we're finding out in the blue zones, you have to go a long way to get ahead of what Hippocrates noted before our calendar even started. Well, as you well probably know, that more and more is known about genetics and research in this area of the DNA that's coded in our genes that control cellular synthesis of bioactive compounds that operate the biochemistry and the physiology of our bodies. And in Okinawa, they found a gene called FOXO3 that they think is associated with longevity and is common in Okinawans. And what does this FOXO3 have to do? Well, the activity works against shortening of telomeres, which are caps on the end of the chromosomes, or the chains that have the code in them to control cellular synthesis of how to combine amino acids, fatty acids, carbohydrate units called sugars or monosaccharides, vitamins, minerals, and other plant phytochemicals to hook them together to make compounds that run the biochemistry of life. And every time there is a division of a cell, telomeres shorten if you don't have a very broad diet which supports an enzyme called telomerase, which will keep adding to these caps on the end of the DNA change, which protects them against mutations. In other words, the telomeres are effective against mutations, which can result in cancer. And these long telomeres are found in what is considered currently an aging clock, that you have short telomeres every time a cell divides. And this is associated with families that tend to die of strokes and heart attacks or diabetes and other diseases sometime between, say, 55 and 70. And also there are short telomeres in animals that have short lifespans. However, in the Okinawans and in the blue zones, the people tend to have long telomeres that particularly in families that live to be 90 to over 100 years, and also long telomeres in animals that have long lifespans. And at this present time, the gold standard for anti-aging research, particularly in these blue zones that we're emphasizing, is the theory that telomeres are an aging clock, and any practice that will protect and lengthen telomeres is desirable to support longevity and to reduce the incidence of diseases that are associated with aging. So with that, we bring this article in Epoch Times to an end, and we will go in our next series to articles that are in the National Geographic. And with that, I would like to respond to any questions